Which facet of the RSD is most important in the solving of a problem, of a solution, and a solution faced by Apollo 13? So I'm going to play you two brief videos, 1 minute one and a 3 minute one. You're going to look at the Apollo 13 faced a problem, and you're going to have to, with your newly formed team, you'll be leaving the lecture space, going around wandering for a while, and you will be a facet. And you don't know which facet you are, but you've already been pre-allocated, and you've had the information all day, and maybe one or two people have already worked it out, but you've already been allocated a facet, and I need to work out that in a second. But when you're watching the video, I want you to particularly keep your facet in mind, because you'll be talking about you, like, hi, I'm Embark & Clarify. You'll be talking about it with your group, and I was really important for the Apollo 13, because, and so you need to talk with other people in your group about which particular facet, the way you saw that facet operating.
So there were lots of opportunities for error in communicating the procedure, which was the solution. So I think that communicating and using appropriate language to do that, and being mindful of the context, was certainly all very important.
But then they also had to find a solution, and that's the synthesis. Is that what you?
What I was saying is it was defined as putting a square peg into a round hole.
And that's the find and
But if
generate.
you take a step back from the problem and you say the problem is there's a build-up of CO2, might they have come up with a solution using the same box of gadgets that they had available to them?
I don't think that's how they did it.
No, but what we're saying is what could they do?
Well, what are we arguing over? A or F, basically?
Yes.
Yeah,
A
those
or
are our.
F.
Those are.
I think that's come down to
All right,
that,
let's
yes.
vote on A or F.
Okay, let's try for a vote.
Okay. Who says A?
Even though I'm there.
Who's the flasher? So don't flash your card, just put up a empty hand. So who in your group is going to be raising the card? So they have to raise the hand. Who's the flasher? One flasher? And your group's here? You've got a group all the way along to here? Are you ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, flash. Oh. Did I say one of them go up and one go down again? No? Okay, we've got 2 Fs, we've got 2 As, and we've got an E. Ooh. So let's start with the, keep your cards up. So let's start with the A's, first of all. So I'll use the roving mic. We just want to hear why you decided that A was the most important facet in that particular Apollo 13 problem.
Yes, our group believes that if the problem is not clear, how can you tackle the problem? So we have built this consensus that we need to give this importance to facet A, embark and clear cloud.
Obviously it's A. The pivotal moment for us was when the bag ripped and they had to embark and clarify one more time. So we returned to the centre, we started again, the problem was redefined.
Well, my group thought that as one of them was in space and one half was on Earth, if they weren't able to communicate and actually get the procedure across to the astronauts to be able to fix the problem, it doesn't matter how good the solution was.
Yeah. I like the operative word argument, because each of our facet representatives was arguing the case very strongly, until we realised, of course, they're all important.
This activity was a little bit different from this morning. This morning, you saw the RSD emerge in your own words. We find it helpful for students to see not a given framework, but they've had an experience. And from that experience, they're calling out, they're saying, I did this is the skill I used, like you did. And they're seeing those facets emerge in their own words, and then we map them onto the words that like I'm using, and the words that you'll be using. So that is an introduction to the RSD facets. One of the questions on SurveyMonkey was about how this approach works with like 50% cohort of international students who, even if you do it a USP approach, it had a lot of things happening in undergraduate, or as, you know, as we're doing more and more at University of Adelaide, having more sort of things happen throughout undergraduate. If you've got international students, whatever planning you've had to feed into masters is going to become a problem. So it's about introducing the international students or domestic students from another university to these facets, a little bit like this morning. Now, this afternoon's activity, this one we just did with Apollo 13, was a little bit different from this morning. You were just given the facets. You kind of walked away with them and people were referring them to them often. And that activity was to not introduce the facets, but to reanimate them. What we've seen is now we've been interviewing students for about 6 or 7 years, a year after they've done an RSD, a course that implements RSD, or more recently, program levels at undergraduate that implement RSD. What we're seeing is a lot of evidence that students move from year 1 and then year 2, it looks as if they've forgotten everything. Everything. Including even rich development of RSD. And in fact, when we interviewed students early on in the piece back in 2006, there was evidence from those interviews that the skills would atrophy. They'd actually build their conceptual muscles with this explicit articulation of research skills in multiple contexts. But then if it wasn't explicit in second year, there was evidence from those interviews that the conceptual muscles would grow weaker. And then when we started interviewing students across whole programs, they had rich RSD in first year and then in their honours year, fourth year, without explicit RSD in the second and third year. There was clear evidence from at least some of the students that they, without the explicit nature, that those skills did start to sink into the background and they needed them reanimated. So this Apollo 13 activity is a sort of exemplar of what you could do to use disciplined content, a really pithy example the students can get their teeth into, to say, okay, let's say you know these facets. So you might hand out a pentagon. Remember these? You looked at them last year in another course? You know, and the students think, what? I don't know. But as they start to, as you did, apply them, by the application to the problem, they'll start to reanimate them. The interview that we did with honour students suggested one thing, which I'll finish this segment on, which is that the RSD and the rubrics created from it are like a frozen conversation. And giving them rubrics, or the RSD, is like hitting them over the head with a block of ice. It's as hard and as difficult as that.